So I just want to get right into it. Your name is Natalie Campbell, and you're running for Mayor of London in 2024. And apart from just being excited to see a black woman going for that position within politics, and apart from that is a great representation for our community, but just watching your interview and hearing about your upbringing and your career and how you became the person you are today, and the person you are, like an absolute high achiever, and you seem like somebody that if somebody was to give you something, you just know it's kind of safe, and you like always know what you're doing, and an absolute thought leader. You are the founder, the CEO of Blue Water, and you sat on the board for the National Lottery Fund, and also of Westminster. You were the Chancellor.
I'm the Chancellor.
You are Chancellor of Westminster University, and the list goes on and on and on. And I'm just like, wow. And one thing I really loved you saying in one of your interviews is that you see being the Mayor of London like being the CEO of London City. And I was like, that's an amazing way to look at it. Anyways, without further ado, I would just like you to introduce yourself from like career to all your honors, and go a bit from tell your story a little bit from your early life to where you are now, please.
Firstly, thank you for having me.
Yes.
I love your platform and the thought-provoking conversations that you have, which is why I was like, yes, let's have this chat. And so if I go back, my journey and the reason lots of things that I do feel like now that, you know, I know what to do and I'm successful and I've always got a plan is that I wanted to be a CEO at 15. I'm 40 now. So I've been on this journey for a really long time. I didn't decide a year ago that I wanted to be a CEO or that I wanted to be Mayor of London or that I wanted to do something to help people. This has been a really long journey. And I wanted to be a CEO because of 90s hip hop. That whole movement, the energy, the freedom, like the entertainment. It was the first time for me watching music, and especially hip hop and black music. It was the first time it had moved out of being the culture into the business. And so I fell in love with the business, with the idea of the record labels and the product endorsements, and not just the endorsements, but also having their own products. And so I thought I was going to become a media mogul, and that never happened. In the end, my first business was a retail franchise. So I went to Lancaster University, and I was looking at different ideas from coffee shops to, well, mainly coffee shops, but I started off doing student club nights and student magazines. And then I opened a retail clothing franchise when I was in my second year, going into my third year of university, and that really started my entrepreneurial journey.
And what would you say, I mean, doing a little bit of research as well, I just saw that there was this drive to just become, like, I see you and I can see the hip hop part, but that's not just natural. Not everybody has been introduced at a young age at the hip hop culture and thought, I'm going to be a CEO. People thought, I'm going to be a video vixen, or people want to be, I'm going to be a singer, I'm going to be a rapper, I'm going to be as cool as these people. But you just looked at the business side of things. Like, where does this vision come from?
So I say I'm Jamaican. So the idea of being someone and something for me is a very Jamaican sensibility, or it was in my household anyway. Like, my family are, I don't like the term overachievers, but they are. I mean, everyone has multiple degrees and. And I come from an entrepreneurial family as well. So I was always around an environment where you could always do. People couldn't tell you no, and if they told you no, you find another way. Or you could only be made to feel inferior if you accepted what someone else said about you. Your power is in here, and I felt that very strongly growing up. And so I guess if you've got that from a nurture perspective, you've got a bit of nature, you've got a bit of nurture, and then adding the hip hop. I had no interest in being a video vixen. I went to where the power was. Maybe that's the bit in me that I can't really explain, but looking at that dynamic, for me, the vixens didn't have the power. Not even the rappers and the singers had the power. And I did performing arts. I used to sing and I used to dance. But unless I believe I'm the best at something, then I know that's not going to be the long-term goal. But there was something in the CEO piece where I was like, they get to see the whole system. They're not just a component in the system. They get to do the whole thing. They get to make decisions. They get to drive things forward. Ultimately, they're the ones that are most wealthy. And even though we're only having the conversation about it now, I understood that the person probably making the most money in that dynamic was the CEO and the record label, not the artist, because of the publishing rights. And I knew that at 15.
I'm just like so blown away how you knew that at 15.
So I read a lot. So I always read around the subject. And it was, well, the internet didn't really exist. So you had to read magazines. So then we'd get like Vibe, and there was Vibe, Voice, Sister, I think it was Sister to Sister magazine or something. But basically all of these like black hip hop magazines from the US. And I would read them, and in the articles you could hear what the artists were saying, you could hear what the publishers were saying. And I always gravitated more towards what the publishers were saying. So Arista Records, run by Clive Davis and others, like I was more interested in what they were doing than what Mace was doing as a rapper or what Brandy was doing as a singer. And yeah, maybe it was just instinctive in me.
You also talked about how you grew up with your grandparents, and your grandparents raised you, and how your grandparents were also foster parents, and there were loads of kids in the house. And do you also feel like that maybe part of you being a high achiever is like also to like stick out between all these other children, or do you think they're...
Oh no.
No.
Partly because I was the eldest, so I didn't need to stick out because I was already the eldest and therefore the leader in the space. I'm the eldest grandchild. I'm the eldest child for my dad, and I lived with my paternal grandparents. So it was never that. If anything, I didn't want to play and be a child. I just wanted to be an adult. I used to get really upset because no letters used to come for me. Like I laugh about this now. When I see a letter, I'm like, please, no, because it's a bill. Whereas when I was younger, I was like, no letters come for me, because that was a sign of adulthood. I think it is, I have a wild spirit. And as I'm going through this process, because people ask great questions like you do, I'm trying to really dig deep and say, well, where does it come from? And I do just think it's my family DNA. It's the energy of generations. It's my Jamaicanness. It's my Northwest Londonness. It's my hip hop. It's my badass aunties. It's all of that combined.
You were talking about growing up in Northwest London. You're talking about how you had the privilege of a safe London.
Yeah, I did.
And I moved to London from Austria about 14 years ago. Okay. And I never experienced a safe London because, you know, the murder streets were already there, and it's like the crime rates within certain areas in London were already existing. So when you said that, I was like, huh? Yeah. And then I remembered, you know, that a while ago, probably 10, 15, 20 years before I even moved to London, no, 10 years, it wasn't like that. So can you tell me a little bit about that, growing up in a safe London, and the transition of what happened? What do you think happened that we are where we are right now?
Yeah, so firstly it makes me sad because maybe I am the way I am because I didn't live with high anxiety as a child like young people have to do now. I could play out, as in, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11. We could like play out, and I don't mean in the front of our house, as in like I was missing, like miles away from home, playing out, climbing trees, never that high because I'm not very good with trees, but you know, it was just kids being kids. So it was very different, I think, because it was a different time. all of the families that lived on my road had lived there since the 60s. And so you had Jamaican families and Irish families and Guyanese families and Dominican families. And it was just one big melting pot. And so from a safety perspective, you could go onto the high road because you knew all the shopkeepers. And if anything happened and you were misbehaving, like word would get home before you even got home. A good example, I was hit by a car as a child. I was going to the library. Because back then, 8-year-olds could just go to the library by themselves because it was safe. And I was on my way home and I was crossing the zebra crossing and the person was trying to beat the lights, and I was hit quite badly. And I was hit at a junction where the local stationers knew me and came out straight away, picked me up off the street, and like called my family, and they were there within 5 minutes. And it takes me back to, if that happened now, I think people would look around and say, does anyone know who this kid is? I guess children have mobiles now, but back then we didn't have mobiles. So it did feel very different. And then as I got to 15, 16, 17, I could walk between different estates in northwest London. And I said this to a group of girls the other day. I was like, look, I could leave my house in Willesden and I could walk to Church Road, and I could walk from Church Road to Mitchell Brook, and from Mitchell Brook to St Raph's, and St Raph's to Stonebridge. And even if a boy would try and talk to you, it would never get intense or to the point where you felt threatened, because someone else would be like, bruv, like, calm down. Or you could be like, who are you talking to? And it was never going to kick off.
Yes.
And that is very different. We had a lot of gun crime, but it was very much connected to drugs. Not just a freewheeling mental health issue where you really didn't know what was going to happen moment to moment.
And what do you think happened? Like why?
I think there's been a breakdown of the social contract in society. So between, I guess, leaders that are supposed to be looking after us, the Metropolitan Police and society, specifically with young people, lack of opportunities for young people, and I'm not sure, the chicken and the egg, does the lack of opportunities come before the mental health crisis, or does the mental health crisis come before? But I think if we had youth provision, even in a mental health crisis, those young people would be supported, because at least they'd have a safe space to be and a safe space to go. You have to connect the change in government and austerity with it. It would be naive to say that that didn't have an impact. When you withdraw public services and you withdraw support, central needed support, it's going to have a knock-on effect. And the way that I categorise it now is there are 85,000 young people, children, that are considered homeless in London right now. That is 85,000 young people that we know are going to be at risk of carrying a knife, that we know are going to be at risk of having acute mental health issues, that we know will be at risk of all sorts of trauma and violence in their lives. So why not protect them now? Why not make sure they have a home now? And that's when I get really frustrated with politics. I'm like, you can see the correlation, every data point that you have had for, for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I studied sociology, we know this stuff. So protect the 85,000 kids now.
Yes.
Make sure they have homes and food in the fridge now. Make sure their families have the support structures they need to create well children. Just do it now and save the knife crime issues that you're going to have in 10 years' time.
You went for a job interview that ended up being a public speech. Was it for the
for British Youth Council.
Oh, for the British Youth. And you went up and you were saying you're a capitalist.
Yep.
I think it's quite interesting because there is this new movement of anti-capitalism and classism, and lots of people going against capitalism and blaming capitalism on parents not being able to spend quality time with their children, unsupervised children, even homelessness to a certain extent, because it does drive a barrier between parents and children and families when everybody's working and nobody has time for anything. But how does your capitalist mindset go with your more socialist manifestos?
Yeah. So I have a couple of challenges here. So growing up, my gran worked all the time, my granddad worked all the time, my dad worked all of the time, everyone worked all of the time. And I'm still well adjusted. And I can say that for every single, people worked. Working is not a new concept. The economy has changed and the work people do has changed, and the gap between what was seen as a well-paid working class job and now the managerial classes has changed. So the reason I said at that meeting that I was a capitalist, because what I realised walking into that room was that everyone at the British Youth Council was connected to the National Union of Students. And I'd been an entrepreneur, and I was always outside of that union space as a sort of solo entrepreneur with a high sense of agency doing all of this stuff. And they needed to know who I was. And I don't think it's incompatible to say that, because I believe in money. I understand the power money has. I do not believe in greed. And personally, I make money and give it away. The business I run gives 100% of its net profits to WaterAid.
Oh, so the charity? Okay, yeah.
So you can absolutely build a business and be successful and show up and be a good person in society and not devalue people and pay people well and contribute to the environment and the world around you. The bit that flips it to being irresponsible is when greed comes in, is when the idea that you must all work for me at zero, with zero benefits, and I get rich off the top. That, to me, that goes beyond capitalism. That's just being a selfish asshole.
Like everybody always says, money is the root of all evil, but it's not really. It's what we do with the money. Exactly. And, everybody wants to live a great life. Like, I guess also to a certain extent, people that are in charge of distributing budgets within, the country. I'm not saying like that's a big responsibility, and you should also be paid for that. That's fine.
There's an equity and a responsibility, I think.
Yes.
Not I think, I know. And that's the bit that we're missing. When people become self-interested, regardless of what sector they're in, and I would say even people that sit on the socialist side are self-interested because they're gatekeeping for their own interests. And I've never seen, and I don't want to call out unions here, but union bosses get paid a lot of money and they get subsidised homes and their pension pots are huge. If it wasn't about money, give up your pension pot, give up your subsidised house, reduce your salary by half. Oh, you're not going to do that, are you? Why? Because it's a big, challenging job that's demanding, and that's probably your value in the market. So I think we need to have honest conversations. And given that unions make their money from the dues of working people, there's every right to say that a general secretary probably shouldn't have all of the perks and benefits that they have without much public scrutiny either, because everyone perceives them to be the good guys. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying everyone points the fingers at the commercial end of things, but I think we need to take a holistic look.
Yes.
And really say, okay, are people operating regardless for the greater good, or are they acting in a self-interested way?
And you were also talking about being on the board of was it the National Lottery Fund? Yes. Yep. And how you got there and everybody was white, upper class and male, most of the people. What is something like, is that a big reason why you wanted to sit on the board? And also to what conclusions did you come throughout that experience?
Yeah. So I applied for the Big Lottery Fund 3 times. It was called the Big Lottery Fund back then. Big Lottery Fund, okay. Now National Lottery Communities Fund. I applied 3 times. The first time I applied for what was called the England Committee. And that's the committee that distribute all of the grant funding within England. And I got to interview and I didn't get it. So I was like, okay, fine. I then saw they had a board, I think we've got the main board, a main board role, and I wasn't even shortlisted. And I was slightly confused. I was like, well, I got to the interview last time and now I'm not being shortlisted. Okay, fine. And then I saw it again, and this is like 18 months later, another opportunity. So I applied again, and I specifically said in my cover letter, you need me, because you are making decisions about people that look like me without anyone that looks like me around the table. and then put all of my skills and my credentials. And the chair at the time, he's no longer with us, had the wherewithal, and he told me this, I wasn't shortlisted. He was just unimpressed with everyone that was given to him as an A candidate. And he went through and I was in the C candidates, and generally C candidates you don't look at. And he said my statement and my CV stood out, and he wanted to interview me. And he said as soon as he interviewed me, he knew that he needed my skill set and my talent and what I could bring around the table. And I say this story often because when you know you should be somewhere, you don't take no. You try again, and you try again. And in doing that, it meant that by the time I got around that table, there was no imposter syndrome. I never once thought I'm not getting through this process because I'm young, black or female. I also had a shaved head at the time. I got visible tattoos. I never thought it was about that. I was like, I'm not convincing these people that they need me. Hence, in my last one, this is why you need me. I can see there's a gap. This is why you need me. And the rest is history.
When I was listening to you and your story and how you got to uni at Lancaster University, and you that's the first time you were met with racism from coming from London. You haven't really experienced much of that, and then yet still you decided, okay, I'm gonna start
a business here.
Talk me a little bit through the story of how you, tell me a story about how you experienced racism for the first time when you went to Lancaster University, and that pivotal moment where you're like, right, let me get my entrepreneur hat on.
So I think it's a mindset thing, right? You can use adversity as a reason to say, I'm not enough for the world. Or you can use it to say, the world ain't ready for me, let me show them. And I want to point to what Diane Abbott said in her Channel 4 interview. Simeon Brown said to her, he said something about being a victim, and he said, I'm nobody's victim. And it's that. That is the thing. We cannot show up as victims. We know we are not in a majority black country. So if you then add the socioeconomic bit in it, I'm working class. I was raised by my immigrant grandparents who came over from Jamaica. Aspirational, yes, but still very much working class. If I made everything that statistically shouldn't be possible a reality in my life would be very different. What I made my reality was who I intended to be. And it's showing up like that. And that's what I want to give to, for me, I want to give it to everyone, but specifically to young girls, specifically to young black girls. Decide who you want to be and drown out all of the noise. And so when I walked into that pub and they used the N-word, I was with my friend who was ready to she's from Lancaster. She was ready to take them on. And I was like, whatever. I mean, I'm going to open a business in this town and be one of the most successful entrepreneurs, so it's okay. And that's that. It's gonna. Some people might not like the way that I say this, but whenever I've been in an environment where someone has underestimated me, I'm like, oh, it's okay because I'm going to be your boss at some point. So you just won't have seen me coming, which is fine. But I'll be your boss.
You franchised a retail store called Morgan, and the company, they went bankrupt. Yeah. But you decided not to file for bankruptcy because you also, not just because you didn't just want to give up, but also because you had a feeling that it would work against your favor one day, because you couldn't run for mayor of London if you would have filed for bankruptcy. Like, how? And then on top of that, when you were looking into running a coffee shop in a time where there was no coffee shops around, and then a few years later it's everywhere, and you tried to sell your clothes on eBay, which nobody did then, but that is all forward thinking. And I feel like I don't know, you really have a vision for what's to come next.
And I'm gonna own that and not be humble about it. I can feel the mood and a trend of something.
Yes.
And so with coffee, I was reading a book called Anyone Can Do It, and it was the story of two of the early adopters of the coffee revolution in London, Bobby and Zaha Hashimi. And I thought, this is what I'm going to do. but I didn't drink coffee. And it wasn't necessarily in my heart. It was that I knew it would be a successful business because there was something in coffee. But I went to what was in my heart, and that was retail. I'm a retail girl. I still am a retail girl. So I opened a Morgan, and it was great. But the franchise owner went into administration, and so I tried to save the business. I didn't use my working capital wisely because you don't know what you don't know at 23. And I decided not to file for bankruptcy. And it wasn't that I thought I was going to be the mayor of London, but I thought if I want to be in politics, be a magistrate, be a lawyer. I mean, I didn't know that I wanted to be any of these things, but these are all of the things you can't do if you file for bankruptcy.
Yes.
And so I decided to pay off £50,000 worth of debt myself. But what that meant I had to do was work even harder, because I was on a graduate salary of £21,000. So I was running the store, and I'd moved back to London at the same time. I had a team running the store. And so I had to hustle. And so everything happens for a reason. Had I not have had to pay off that money, I might have eased into my first couple of jobs out of university. And in the end, I had to build a portfolio career, and my portfolio career is what's got me here now.
And I mean, I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but we haven't really gotten into it properly. When you said that being mayor of London is like being a CEO, but being in the CEO of London, because I guess you get a budget and then you have all these different areas, and you just step by step manifest what you set out to do. Can you talk a little bit of how you also talked about that the mayor of London is actually in charge of arts and culture, education for people above 16 years old. What are the other things the mayor of London is in charge of? And can you go into all of the ones that mean the most to you, and how you're gonna manifest your vision?
So the thing I would say is, my CEO's hat is it's all important. So the reason I say it needs a CEO's approach is because London is a system. A business is a system. You don't go into a business and say, I only care about finance. I only care about marketing. I only care about the product. You might have a specialism, but if you only care about one part of the business, everything else suffers. And politicians, because they don't, and the ones we've currently got, haven't come from that multidisciplinary skill set. They've been either on a litigation side, or they've been advocates where they know how to write letters. They don't see the system. And so for me, arts and culture, business, opportunities for young people, sport, homes and neighbourhoods, the environment, transport, all of these things are connected in an order, but they're all connected. And I've been talking a lot recently about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so for anyone that doesn't know, Maslow's hierarchy is a triangle. At the base of the triangle are the things that you need to basically survive. And it's food, shelter, safety, and a few other things, psychological safety. And then once you've got those things in place, you can move to the next stage of the triangle, the next stage, and the next stage, and the next stage. And the top of the triangle is self-actualization. And when we think about London in that respect, if people do not have good homes, they are never going to self-actualize. They're never going to be able to fully enjoy all of the brilliant things London has to offer. If we don't ensure that young people have the skills that they need to navigate whatever jobs exist in 10 years, because they don't have, the entrepreneurial toolkit, or they don't have the ability to look out into the world and say, what does the future look like? Then there is no economy in London. And it really frustrates me when you hear politicians forgetting that and talking, like today we had a pledge from the current mayor of 40,000 council homes. And what else? It's like, come on. You can't just throw these things out there and not look at the whole. If you're building 40,000 new council homes, you're not going to hit your net zero target. The biggest emitter or the biggest proportion of emissions in any city is construction. So there's a tension and there's a trade-off there. And so as a mayor, you have to look at the whole. And as a CEO, you look at the whole and you say, right, if our goal is here, if that's our North Star, then here are all of the things that we need to do. And then you have an honest conversation with your customers, with everyone that works for you about what the challenges and trade-offs might be, and then you get their buy-in, and that's what I'm ultimately trying to do. And part of your previous question around being able to see the future, I genuinely believe that there is a mood out there at the moment where people want an independent candidate. They don't want a candidate from a political party. They're more willing to back the outside person because we know what we're going to get if we keep voting for the same people that have been around for years, who keep pretending like they haven't been around and in charge for years. And so if 1.5 million people show up and vote for me, we get a candidate that isn't part of that system, but that has a proven record in running businesses successfully, not just to deliver a financial return, but to deliver a return for people and for the environment. And it's very different. It's very, very different.
58% of people that are registered to vote, that's not even taking the people that are not registered and can vote, to actually not vote. So 58% of people
that's crazy.
In London don't vote. I'm somebody, I must honestly say, I'm not really interested in voting. I was never interested in voting because I always was quite convinced that politicians don't actually hold any power in a country like England, and also that often the politicians are just puppets, and the powers that be or whoever sits behind. You said actually there's the mayor and the
GLA, Greater London Authority.
Yes. So when you said that, I was thinking, okay, yes, even if you become mayor of London, what you say makes so much sense, and you have to know how to do it. But then sometimes I think when it comes to actually making things better for the people in London, that this organization behind you, will they even allow you to do that?
Yes. So it goes back to the system. You have to understand systems to know how to change them. And I have spent most of my career in big, unwieldy systems, not as an employee per se, but in some kind of different role. So in a non-executive role where you're looking at the system from the very top. And so I understand the system, and I've made it my business to understand the system. The other bit of this is that it's very easy when you're a politician to allow the officers, as they're called, to make the big calls and you sort of sign them off. That's not how I run the GLA. So there are currently 10 deputy mayors. I won't have any non-statutory deputy mayors. I will set up the way that the offices are run in a very different way. So I'm much closer to the results and the outcomes. And I will always also use the GLA as much more, and this is a bit of a jargony term, of a think tank for London. So coming up with what does the future look like? What is the best version of what we can do? And now I'm going to share that with local authorities, as opposed to everyone swirling away and trying to figure out how to create a new neighbourhood, like in the area that we are right now. Like, how do you create this? What if that conversation is had at a mayoral level, and we're looking at the best of what's possible, and then funding and investing with local authorities to then make it happen and evaluate and move these things on as we're learning what works, as opposed to building more of the same. Like, as I walked up here, I was like, this looks like any other, high density, multi-facility site. What makes it unique? I don't think anything makes it unique based on what everyone in London is building right now. But how do we know that this is absolutely the right thing in the right place, in the right space? And it's that sort of stuff that you can bring to being the Mayor of London and the GLA.
What are your thoughts on the current state of politics?
I don't want to talk badly about MPs because I think they do a challenging job. But people need to understand an MP has no what we call levers. They have no financial levers. They cannot make any financial decisions. They have no infrastructure levers, so there's literally nothing they can do about a problem themselves. Like, they can't call someone up and be like, this needs to be changed. They can write letters. So when an MP writes you a letter, you have to respond. And so there is an influencing and an advocacy bit of work that they do, but they are the legislative body of the UK. Depending on where they are. The mayor of London is very different. The mayor has an immediate lever in terms of financial levers, infrastructure, being the chief commissioner of the Met Police, of the fire brigade, setting the London plan, which determines what can be built and where it can be built. It's totally different, and I don't think people understand just how much power there is. But we've heard a mayor say there isn't any power for a very long time, and we've had the politicking between parties, so that it's easy to go, well, I didn't get this done because you did this. It's like, come on, whilst you're doing that, people are suffering.
Yes, and it's awful. Like, I know sometimes when you're in the restaurants and the waiters start arguing with each other, I'm just like, can I just have my food? Like, you guys, can you just...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's all like everyone is saying, can I just have my food?
Yes.
Can I just have somewhere to live? Can I just pay my bills? Can I walk down the street safely whilst you lot are busy chatting to each other?
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
And they have like this ego game going on, and it's just like, okay. I must honestly say, I mean, it has become quite difficult to live in London, you know. Things are getting cut, it becomes more difficult by the day, and people are proper feeling it. It's depressing. And you notice it in the mental health. And you know, I must honestly say, I don't live far from here, you know, and there's Poundland very close to where I live, and in the night it keeps on getting broken in. And I'm just like, yes, I know it's crime, but I don't even blame anybody anymore. Not saying that crime is good, but like you said, what do you expect if you're not looking after people? And then, oh, the crime rate is going up. Oh, really, is it?
What we haven't had is politicians actively saying and genuinely meaning it when they hear people are finding it hard and saying, do you know what, as a result of these decisions, life is harder for you. And we will do everything we can, and it will be hard, challenging, uncomfortable, but we will get to a place where your basics, your Maslow's hierarchy is looked after. What we've got is people finger pointing and leadership challenges, and again, I'm going to say the word self-interested, just people fighting with themselves, and they get to do that because they're okay, their bills are paid. And they're doing that and really demonstrating just how little they really care about people. And that for me is the shift. You know, I liked the current mayor, I voted for the current mayor. I sat on 2 of the current mayor's boards.
Oh yeah, exactly. You were also on the board of the current, yes.
Yeah. And then it gets to a point where you're like, you know what, I don't think you're helping anymore. And I don't think you're even trying to help. And then Child Q happened, and I was like, there is no way that I can ever support you. And so now I'm going to have to run against you.
Okay, and you have to like a friendship with him, or how is it?
No, so I was in a working relationship.
Yes.
So sitting next to him at board meetings, you know, an acknowledgement absolutely of each other. But it gets to the point where you realise that someone isn't who they say they are. You know, the Maya Angelou quote, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And for me, any politician that can turn a blind eye to a 15-year-old girl being strip searched, then you will never get my vote ever again.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Child Q.
Yes.
Yeah. So Child Q, it came to light just post in the pandemic that a 15-year-old girl had been strip searched by the Met Police whilst at school because a teacher called the police on her because they smelt marijuana. She was strip searched by female officers without supervision. She was on her period, and she absolutely rightly felt violated. And you know, we can all imagine, and her mum said it, just how much as an individual she changed. And the simplest thing in my mind would be to say, do you know what, we're going to ban the use of strip search in schools because something fundamentally went wrong here. And the mayor wouldn't endorse it. The Children's Commissioner then did a review to find out how many children have been strip searched by the Met Police, and it's over 9,000. So that to me says there is a systemic practice and policy that you can strip search children. Some of those children were under the age of 13. Mentally, what do you think those young people now feel about themselves? What relationship do you think they have with authority in the Met Police? And we know that the majority of them were black and brown boys. So if you are a mayor that says, I'm about creating opportunities for young people, and you like having photos next to young black and brown boys, but you're allowing them, and girls, and you're allowing them to be strip searched, to me, the two don't go together. You choose either protect them or stop putting them in your photos.
I mean, that one is anyways crazy, like them diversity pictures. It's just, I mean, we know anyways, we in the black community be talking about these things a lot, and you
but
know,
we need to sharpen vote. And this is why people can continue to take the piss out of us, because we get angry, and then when we need to show up, we don't show up.
You're very relatable. You are a black woman raised with humble beginnings, not poor, you said, but humble beginnings. And do you think that Britain or England is ready for that? Not as the people, but more like the other side you're going to be working with. Yeah, that's totally more conservative and white, male dominated. Do you think they're ready for you?
So two parts. So people need to look up Karen Bass. She is the mayor of LA. She won against the institution. The person she was going up against was the favorite. He had like 200 million, because you know in the US, like they have loads of money, and she had 9 million, and she still won. Because there gets to a point where people are like, things are so bad, only a black woman's gonna save us.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
Because there's a point, like, we take no shit, and we do the work. So, and we, you know, work twice as hard, all of that sort of stuff. We know how to do the work. So there's that. On the institution side, one of the things I do want to address, because there are some people saying, I could never vote for her because she was a Tory. I was a member of the Lib Dems for 4 months and the Conservatives for 4 months, because I am not in the political world, and I wanted to run for mayor, and I wasn't thinking about running independently. So I looked at the Lib Dems and I realised they'd never had a black MP, and the dynamic was just that I won't do very well here. Labour's just not an option for me, not even because of Sadiq, just no. So I joined the Conservatives for 4 months. I understood the system, understood the process, and then I ran independently. There are some people like, oh my God, she's a Tory, she must hate black people, blah, blah. No. Sometimes you have to understand a system to know what you need to do. And I guess now, given where we are, I can say hand on heart, if I was their candidate, after the comments of that donor, I would have stepped down. There's no way. Like my red line is people saying crazy things about black people. I'm not here for it. I would have stepped down. There's no way that I could stand up and represent a party in that role with a party that would not endorse the fact that what he said was wholly racist. I absolutely now get why people don't like it. And I say maybe it was short-sighted on my part. Maybe it was a mistake. But I stand by what I did because I know a lot more now now that I'm running independent because I went through that process. And so to what you were actually saying about the systems, I've worked for the royal family. I understand the systems and the dynamics. I've worked at the heart of government. I understand the systems and the dynamics. And I've been apprenticing myself to run for mayor. You can't just show up having done nothing and say, I'm going to run for mayor. You have to have been in places and been in the corner of the rooms and have all of this stuff in your toolkit to be successful. And that's why I'm running, because I've got it in my toolkit. And not everyone will get that. But if people look at my CV, what they need to understand is, for me to have been in the places that I've been in, I must be good.
Yes,
because
very true.
Below average black women do not get access to the places that I've had access to. And I'm going to add the media into that. You know, I had a radio show on Talk Radio. Again, not many black women have talk radio shows. And we started it when not many women had talk radio shows. It was Women's Hour. Women speaking to women was pretty much 4% of radio output when we started. So I'm not afraid to be in those places and challenge the norm and understand, well, why is it like this? And sometimes we have to stop going, oh, you know, that's bad, and go, well, what can I learn if I'm around that table? What can I change if I'm around that table? And people, I think, will just have to take it on my word that I am who I say I am. And, you know, my CV and the work that I've done. But I genuinely believe, as Mayor of London, people's lives will be better. I wouldn't say it otherwise.
What's your call to action? I mean, I know you have to get 330 signatures from across
London,
evenly spread across all boroughs.
10 from every borough. Yeah.
I mean, you can tell me, what can I do to help as well? Because I would definitely like to work with you, or help you, support you beyond like these videos. And I mean, also create more content in terms of like, I'm happy to like come to events, create some content, let my audience know as well. And get other people on board, maybe that I think would also like to have you on their, you know, podcasts and things like that, if you're interested. Absolutely. But what's your general call to action?
One call to action.
Yes.
I become the Mayor of London, regardless of what you hear the candidates say about a two-horse race. This is factual information. I become the Mayor of London if 1.5 million Londoners vote for me. It's first past the post. 58% of Londoners didn't vote. That's about 3.9 million people. I only need half of those people that have never voted before to show up and vote for me. And then we get a different London. We get a better London. And so I don't want anyone to focus on anything else, just the vote.
Yes.
That's it.
And it's on the 2nd of May?
2nd of May.
Okay. And what are you doing from now till then?
Everything.
Yes, yeah.
So the nominations has been the focus, but we're moving on from that now. I think we're pretty much there. I'll announce soon when I know we're 100% there, because it's quite a long-winded process. But then after that, the only thing people hear me say, if it's not the policy manifesto ideas, it's 1.5 million votes, 1.5 million votes, 1.5 million votes. I cannot do it just off some people sharing stuff on TikTok. It has to be when the time comes, I need people to put signs in their windows. Even if you write it yourself, Team Campbell, people walking past your window seeing Team Campbell go, what is Team Campbell? Just that name recognition. If people are willing to drop leaflets or do rallies in their town centre or knock some neighbours' doors, or even if they are just sharing stuff in WhatsApp groups. I know you lot's WhatsApp groups are really powerful. All of that is really important. But then on vote day, saying to people, tell me you voted.
Yes.
Because I know what we're like. If it's raining outside, we ain't going nowhere. And if the rain stops us, or just us not remembering it's the 2nd of May, stops us from having a better London, we will kick ourselves. Because we know what the alternatives are going to give us.
Yes.
They're not going to give us anything different to what we've experienced over the last 8 years. So show up and vote. Okay.
I definitely will. Like everything you were saying as well. I was like, oh, do you have leaflets so you can give me that I can hand out? Yeah, no, I definitely will. Even though I'm definitely one of the 58% of people that never wanted to know anything about voting. But I think this is a great opportunity. Like you also said, nothing happens for no reason. The universe doesn't bring anything to you for no reason. And I guess we're sitting here for a reason. So I'll take that, and I'll definitely vote and get everybody to. Even yesterday, I was already like messaging. I was like about to go to bed. I'm like, I know this guy. He should have her on as well. So yes, perfect. No, definitely. Okay, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, I hope we get to work together in the future.
As Mayor of London.
Oh my God, that would be so amazing. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.